Graphistas, hello and welcome. So I don't know for you here, but currently in Paris it's super warm. Summer is around the corner, so I've got all my windows open, which means there might be some extra noise. So apologies for that in advance. The good news is I'm not gonna talk too much today because we have Eric Solender, so CTO of Mindstand and creator of Gogem, the OGM, so Object Graph Mapper in Golang for Neo4j, who is coming back this week to show us a little more about Gogem and its new version 2 and see how we can apply it to the movies datasets. But before we start with that, as usual, I just wanted to share a few words with you about an event you probably have heard about already, but I'd rather make sure of it. So let me talk about Nodes 2021, so the Nodes online conference, which is happening tomorrow. So you still have some time to save a seat, and you should do it. There will be very exciting announcements for Neo4j, very exciting demos and talks. So please join, save your spot. It's super easy to do, super fast, and the agenda is already online, so you can already make your own program and choose talks you want to attend. And that's the only announcement I had for you today. So now let me gently stop my screen sharing and let's have Eric start on his Gogem demo, right? Is that correct? Are you gonna show us some Gogem V2 magic?
Yeah.
So I thought I was not sharing, but I was still, and now Eric will share if I click on the right buttons. Yes, now it works better. Perfect.
So yeah, I'll just review. Hi everyone. My name is Eric Solender. I'm the CTO and co-founder of Mindstand Technologies, which is a AI startup in Baltimore, Maryland, in the United States. We do HR software, so monitoring Slack, Teams, stuff like that for harassment, hate speech, and also giving leaders at those companies metrics to create a more inclusive online environment. When you do a lot of conversation modeling, graphs are very useful. So that's where my interaction with Neo4j came from. So anyway, so we recently released Gogem V2 and then very quickly released Gogem 2.01 and 2.02. And 2.03 is coming very soon because I found a couple more bugs in it. So this is branched off of my 2.03 dev branch, but this will be pushed probably today anyway because it works now. So what we're going to do is see how Gogem works with an actual data set. I've already initialized a Neo4j database with the movies data set that comes default with Neo4j. And in this demo, I'll show how to set up the domain or like the models for it, how to initialize it correctly, and how to use it inside of an actual endpoint. We're using Gorilla Mux for the API code, but this can also work with Gin or any other API platform for Go. So actually, let me start with this. So I'm going to share my Neo4j tab so I can explain this a little better. All right. Can you see? Okay, cool. So here's the basic movies data set. You have a person with an edge acted in pointing at a movie. You also have directed. Some actors also directed their movies. Some people only directed movies like this. And inside of the edge acted in, we're also storing the role that the actor played. So we have to create 3 things: a person node, a movie node, and a special edge for acted in so that we can store roles. So I'll switch back to the code now. Let's see. All right. So here we define the basic types for the movie and the person. Everything in Gogem needs to implement Gogem base node or Gogem base UUID node. Really, anything that just extends base node is fine. So to review, base map just has an int64 pointer for the graph ID and this little load map thing so that it knows the state that the node was loaded in with. And then this base UID node is just extending base node. So this gives movie the bare minimum it needs to work as a Gogem node. So then we define our title, our release, so our just basic fields, and then we can define all the relationships it has. So to review with Gogem, every relationship needs to be a pointer, whether it be a direct pointer or a slice of pointers. Either way is fine. And then you have to define the direction and the relationship. I'll come back to the JSON part later and explain that piece. So yeah, so this is saying movie relates to person on the field director on the relationship directed, for example. Now we have a special case where the person could act in a movie, and we want to know the role that that person played in that movie. So we have to use a special edge, which is a struct that also implements Gogem base node, but also that uses Gogem base node, but implements the Gogem edge interface. Eventually, this is going to be simplified. My guess is we're going to do something with special tags to make edge a little more straightforward. But for now, you implement the interface. So it just has get start node, get the type, and then set the type. So we just cast it to what we want. So yeah. So when it's iterating through, it uses this edge to know how to get to the next node. So we store here that we want to store an array of strings to represent the roles. And in Gogem, anytime you want to store an array of a primitive or a slice of a primitive, I can't decide whether I want to talk in Java speak or Go speak for some reason with the array slice stuff. But you just add properties as a tag. So this is the basic schema for the movies data set. So to then use the movies data set, or then to actually use this, we have to initialize Gogem. So this is just a basic config. I've already initialized the indices. If you want to initialize the indices, you use assert. If you want to just validate, you use validate. I'm just using ignore for simplicity's sake here. Encrypted, that's actually going to be updated to give more TLS specific stuff. But the rest of this is just specific to the Docker Compose that can be found in the .github folder of Gogem to run Neo4j v4. So to recap, when you initialize Gogem, you have to give a config, your primary key strategy, and pointers to each node or edge you want it to work with. So here we see we're calling Gogem.new, passing in the configuration. We're passing in the default primary key strategy. You could also pass null here if you want to use the default, but just to be more explicit, I'm passing in default. And what default primary key strategy means is it's not using anything special like UUID, like Gogem v1 was dependent on. Now you can use any kind of primary key you want. Default just uses the graph ID that comes with Neo4j anyway. So that's what this part means. So then we just register our movie, our person, and our acted in edge. When you register nodes, it has to be a pointer. If it's not a pointer, it'll yell at you until you make it a pointer. So that's how that works. So then for our example, we're setting a global Gogem. To just remind what that means, you can pass around instances of Gogem if you want to say like only register some types of nodes in some cases. I generally just make one instance and set the global. But the way to access the global instance of Gogem is just gogem.g. And then and then that is the global thing. If you don't call set global Gogem, it won't let you do anything. It's just a no operation instance of Gogem. So whenever you try to make a new session, it'll just return an error that you can't do that until you set it. So anyway, so then the next step is we want to create a session. So it actually can be access mode read because we're not creating anything. So we just declare our session, tell it the access mode we want to run in, and always remember to defer closing the session. If you don't do that, you'll start getting connection leaking to Neo4j, and then as I found out the hard way, Neo4j has a max connections, so be careful about that. So we define a basic query. So we want to grab our favorite movie and get whoever acted in it. So we run this query, and then we can see the actors. I'm going to comment this out for right now. I'm going to put a breakpoint there so that we can actually look at it. So run in debug configuration. That's super helpful. I don't know how to change the font of the debug window. But anyway, you can see here we have 5 actors. And the start node is when we're looking through, like iterating through, you just grab whichever node is a different type to find, and you're using a special edge. So yeah, I'll just run this. And in the console, you can see it prints 5, meaning there are 5 actors for the movie The Matrix registered in the database. So that is the basic like setup portion of Gogem and registering all the stuff for the movie's data set. Are there any questions at this point?
And I'm muted. Okay. No, I'm not muted anymore, but my laptop is super slow. I don't see any questions related to Gogem just yet. So I think so far it's crystal clear.
Okay, cool. So now I'll show how to like actually make a functioning API out of this. So we'll go, the hell did I just do? Whoops. So we'll go over and open mux.go. So I'm using the Gorilla Mux package. As I mentioned before, this will work with any API library that is available in Go. My company, we use Gin, the Ginjonic library, but really anything is fine here. So first, we just have our setup, which is we make a get mux function create a router, and we define two endpoints, /actor, where we pass the name, and /movie, where we pass the name. So I'm going to show the two ways you can inject Gogem into this. So we're passing our OGM, or our Gogem instance, into getMux. So the first way you can do it is by making a function that returns a function pointer, and you pass Gogem into it like this. So we're returning the function definition that Mux requires for an endpoint, which is just a response writer and an HTTP request. Excuse me, I've been having hiccups all day. But yeah, so we just pull apart the basic stuff. All write response is doing is writing the header, marshaling the JSON, and then writing out the response. If this was in production, we would be checking for errors everywhere, but it's not, so who cares? So here we're defining a session. We're creating a new session off of the OGM that we pass in. Where is it? We created an access mode read. We don't need it in access mode write. Also, the access mode doesn't really matter unless, it doesn't really matter unless you're using a cluster, because the way clusters are set up, some nodes are write and some nodes are read only. So this tells the driver under the hood which node of the cluster to send the request to. We're in single node right now, so it doesn't really matter that much. Any node can read anyway, but just some background on that piece. So you create your session, defer closing it. When in Go, when calling defer inside of a function pointer, it's going to return when this function exits, not when this function exits. So then you make the thing you want Gogem to write to. You pass in a context. You put your query, your parameters, and the pointer to the thing you want it to write to. Gogem will run that query, try to write it to this object. If there's an error, you turn the error. If there's no error, you write the response back. It's very, very simple. So that's way number one to use Gogem in this kind of context. The other way to use Gogem is with the global Gogem. So here, instead of returning a function pointer, we're just making this function. This is the function that Mux will actually use. So we pull out the variables from Mux. We grab our name. Then the only difference is just this line right here. Instead of passing Gogem in, we're calling Gogem.g to get our global Gogem instance that we set in main right here. So, wrong file. So yeah, we call new session v2. We run the query to grab the person. I didn't define an edge here because there are a lot of edges to movie, and it'll fill in the blanks itself anyway. So that's why this query is the way it's written. You define your person, you pass everything in, and you're good. And that's how you make an endpoint with global Gogem. And then just to remind, you register your handlers. Since this isn't returning a function, we just use the name of the function. Since this is returning a function, we call it and pass Gogem in, or pass the OGM instance in. A note on JSON. Wait, that was the wrong file. A note on JSON for this kind of thing. So I specifically told Go to not try to serialize any of the relationships from the person perspective, and to not serialize anything, or not serialize the movie. And then inside a movie, I tell it can serialize everything. And the reason for this, Gogem under the hood uses bidirectional pointers. So when we have a director in a movie, movie points at director, director points at movie, and that's how it's stored in memory. So if you try to serialize that, you'll get a Stack Overflow from recursively trying to serialize two things pointing at each other. The easy way to avoid this is to just tell one side to not try to serialize. Now, you may want to be able to query a person and see their movie and not do it from this movie perspective. So the way I would do that is to write special data transfer objects and write an adapter to change the database model to a more clean API schema model. With my company, we have a rule that we don't return any raw database objects. Everything has to be adapted into a data transfer object. That way, you also don't worry about leaking any data that you may not want returning in an API. But for simplicity's sake, for this demo, I just told it, let's just ignore trying to serialize here and try to serialize everything from the perspective of movie. So if I go down here, I comment this out, or comment that in, comment that out. Oh, wait. I guess it doesn't really matter if that runs. So we can run this. And because I don't feel like, or actually we can use Postman. So then going to share Postman. Let me grab the URL. So then we can just use a basic query. So we're going to hit the movie endpoint and pass in the matrix. Oh, no, we don't want to do that. Yeah, and then here's our response. Title, the matrix, and then you see actors, list out all the actors, roles, here's the director, and we didn't define any producers, followers, writers, or reviewers. At least I don't think we did. Maybe the query just doesn't grab those. But anyway, that's essentially how it works. So let me go change this back to yeah, so that's essentially how it works. I also want to thank, let me make sure I get his username correct. Mogztter, Mogztter. He was at Hack Commit Push a few weeks ago, and he created an initial version of the movies example, and I just edited pieces of it to make it more functional, or not more functional. There were errors that night, so I just took it and fixed it up a little bit. So thanks to him for doing that piece. But yeah, so that's how to use Gogem in an actual application. This will probably be in the main branch in Gogem 2.1, which should be coming out pretty soon. Actually, it'll be in the main branch with Gogem 2.03, which will come out probably today. So look out for that. There'll be more documentation to explain what's actually going on. But yeah, so that's the Gogem movies, or that's the Neo4j movies example using Gogem.
Very nice.
So are there any questions, or is that good?
So let me give people another chance to ask questions. I've seen a few questions, but more general about Neo4j. So let me ask again explicitly about Gogem. I guess not, because it was very well explained and demonstrated. So you answered all questions already before they even knew they had questions about Gogem, I guess. So yeah, no questions so far. So you were talking about Gogem 2.1. So what will what's gonna happen to make the move from 2.0x to 1x?
The configuration options for TLS are going to be cleaned up a bit and actually tested with an integration test. So once I can verify TLS is working as expected with the driver, then Gogem 2.1 will be released. I'm also debating simplifying edges, not removing the interface, but maybe deprecating it. I'm not sure if that would be a 2.1 thing, a 2.2 thing, or even later than that. I've been looking into how to simplify, I've been trying to figure out how to make it so the user never has to use the Reflect library. And that was the only place they kind of had to. But it occurred to me that if I try this method, I can get rid of the edge interface and simplify it a little bit more. The other thing that will be coming out is a fix to the Gogem CLI. Actually, I can demo the Gogem CLI real quick now that I think about it. Can you see this?
Yep.
So the Gogem CLI, all that is just something that automatically generates linking functions between nodes. So if we go to here, we just call Gogem CLI generate and then the current directory. Opposite. Oh yeah, and it'll yell at you if you miss defining something. So it looks like follow opposite side not found. I'm not sure why it's saying that actually. It shouldn't. Outgoing follows. Incoming follows. Oh, that's why. In the movie's data set, is it supposed to be person follows a person or person follows a movie?
Sorry, again, my laptop is very slow. That's why it takes ages to unmute. Let me check that. I will tell you. I can check that. I mean, not really quick because everything is slow today, but
for the purposes of this, real quick, I can just. Oh wait. And then this side would be movie. Yeah, so I made it work for that. So linking.go, it just generates these function. Oh, yep, linking that was the update that needed to happen. So linking.go is still UUID dependent. So that's also going to come out in a future update to use the primary key strategy correctly. So
that's a bleeding edge side of Gogem, right? We are not even on a released version, right? We are on the latest commit of the 2.x.
This is the latest commit of of 2.03, which was just fixing some really small problems I found when using it with my company. The biggest change from 2.0 to 2.03 is the graph ID is a pointer to an int64 instead of an int64. That way, Gogem can tell if the node was loaded with the ID 0 versus freshly created, because the 0 value of int64 is 0. So there was no way to tell if it was new or not. So making it a pointer, if it's null, it's new. So that was that part. And since that part's buried in base node, it shouldn't affect anyone. So as long as it's updated, it'll know to use the correct thing. And then the save and load functions were adjusted to accommodate for that. But yeah, so the next couple releases, complete tested TLS support, Gogem CLI fixes, and simplification for edges is what's coming out.
Sounds good. And that's coming pretty soon, right? You told us you would probably do a release today or maybe this week.
Yeah, I mean, this piece is pretty stable, so I probably will just release it when we're done this stream. So yeah, it'll be 2.0.3, and that will just have the under the hood fixes. Since it's just going to be a patch. Actually, I may release it as 2.1 because it has the movies example in it, but we'll see. There will be a release of Gogem today with the fixes, whether or not it's a patch or a minor. It doesn't really matter that much.
Nice. So I do not see any other question, but I have, so I'm gonna use that time here because I'm selfish. I have one question in general. How do you decide what Go versions you want to support for Gogem? What are your requirements?
The original was whatever my company was using at the time. What I've tried to do is make it not backward compatible, but I've tried to leave it a few versions behind the current version, just to make it a little easier. It's all compatible anyway. There's one thing we may be doing in the future that would be using, I think, some stuff in Go 1.17 or 1.16. It's 1.14 though, because in 1.13 they released the whole arrow wrapping stuff, and arrow wrapping is super, super useful. Yep. So yeah, I mean, really, I guess the best answer to that is, if there's a feature that I need, I'll update the version. If not, there's no reason to break something that isn't broken.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Hopefully Go 2 will have generics though.
Oh, and someone is asking for the GitHub link for the demo. So I guess
so it'll be actually, you know what? So the current link to it in the test branch, I'll drop in the chat. And then this will just be in master. How do I write to the chat? Here, I'll just send it to you, then you can.
Yeah. Cool.
So that's the current link. But then it'll be the same location, but the master branch once it's all merged together.
Yeah. Thank you. So I will paste that once my laptop lets me to. Yes, the heat is even impacting my laptop.
I had to buy an external fan for my laptop so it could survive.
I think I'm gonna get my fan out and use it as well.
Try like propping it up on something to give it some room to like breathe. I've noticed that works a little bit.
Yeah, I might try that. I might try that.
But yeah, so yeah, I guess I that's all I have for today. I guess if there are there any other questions or
I
whatnot.
don't see any other questions, so thanks a lot for once again being brave to show the latest version of Gogem live. That's not always an easy thing to do, and so thanks for taking the time to introduce Gogem, having all this series we've done together, and also guide contributors during our commit push like Moxter, as you said. So Guillaume Grosti. So thank you for your contribution, Guillaume. And yeah, we'll watch carefully the next releases and promote them as much as we can, and
Sounds
hopefully
good.
that will get even more users.
Yeah, this is I mean, we passed 30 stars on GitHub. That's the most I've had on any repo I've ever made, so that's pretty cool. Usually they're like 1 star, and it was me. So, but yeah. So yeah, look out for Gogem updates. And anyone who is interested in contributing, I'm on the Neo4j Slack and the Neo4j Discord. So just reach out if you're interested.
So probably Discord from now on. I mean, Slack is probably gonna be shut down soon.
Okay.
Not tomorrow, but soon enough. So Discord will be.
You can see what video games I'm playing if you reach out on Discord.
Nice. Cool. Well, thanks again, Eric. Thanks everyone who joined and asked questions. And obviously, if you have more questions, as Eric said, there is Discord, there is Discourse, so community.neo4j.com. And yeah, we'll happy to help you there. And see you tomorrow at Notes 2021. You still have a few hours to register and attend the amazing keynotes, talks, demos, and chat with the participants. So we hope to see you there. Thank you, and yes, see you soon.